Hey everybody, today we'll be talking about Elasticsearch index templates, ingest pipelines, and alias operations. So these three down here. We're going to be using the Swagger for ES Open API specification that I put together. It's available at the links below. But let's get straight into the index templates. So as expected, you can perform the basic operations of getting all index templates, adding an index template, retrieving a specific index template, and deleting index templates. So they're the endpoints that you need to support those. Let's go and create an index template. So we're going here. So this is the endpoint that we're going to be hitting. This is the country index template is the name that we're going to be giving to this template. The way it works, you'll see that it's very similar to how index configurations are set up. So what will happen here is that all indexes in the future that have this index pattern as their name will have these settings applied. So it's really simple. So obviously you can just set up a simple configuration for your index templates. It can be specific to one index, but you can also have wildcards in there. So it's pretty powerful, but also quite simple. So rather than every time you create an index, you have to create the settings, you basically set a template up at the start, and then all indexes created after that, which match the pattern that you've configured, will get those settings applied. So where this gets sort of even more sort of sophisticated, so that this example has a much more complex analysis chain included within the settings for the index template. It also has an alias in it. So all indexes that get created that match this template. So for example, if you have country 2020, 2021, 22, those kinds of things, they'll all have an alias of countries. So they'll be pulled together in the one index view, if that makes sense. So like a view within an Oracle database table, there's an alias that will alias all indexes that are created as a result of this index template to the alias called countries. So let's create that index template. So big old requests, filtering, so all the things that we spoke about when we were creating indexes, and that's been acknowledged as being created. So that's good. So we've created an index template. In the future, if we create any indexes that match that pattern, they'll inherit all of those index settings. So really it's pretty simple. If you've understood how to configure index, setting up an index template, it's pretty straightforward. Let's just quickly talk about ingest pipelines. So similar, we can retrieve an ingest pipeline, we can save an ingest pipeline, we can delete an ingest pipeline, and we can also simulate one. So ingest pipelines basically are processing that's performed within the Elastic cluster when a document's being indexed. So when the document's coming in, it can be processed a little bit before it's saved into Elasticsearch. So you don't want to probably do too much of that because you're sort of moving processing into your Elasticsearch cluster, where you want to really be able to focus on indexing and then also searching rather than additional processing. But you can do some things. So here's some examples of the types of ingest pipeline activities. So this one's really simple. So you can add a field. So basically, you can give the pipeline description, and then it will have a series of processes. And so this one, the description is we're adding a field. This is the field. This is the value. Pretty, frankly, a bit useless. So this one's a little bit more useful, and I guess I'd probably use this a lot. This is where we add a timestamp to. So this is when the document is indexed. At that point, we apply a timestamp. So often we'll have some upstream processing of documents, but we might want to know when did it actually hit Elasticsearch and get indexed. So we populate this at timestamp field within the document, and we get that from this underscore ingest.timestamp value. We do a little bit of processing here because often I don't want the nanoseconds within my documents. Don't need it. I just happy to have down to seconds. So there's a second processor here. So you saw the first processor which created this at timestamp field. Now we're actually picking up that at timestamp field, and we're reducing the granularity of that request. So let's create that test pipeline with that configuration, and we'll show you how to simulate that down here. So basically, the simulate pipeline works as you can specify a number of documents, and then you hit execute. And what will happen is that, assuming Elasticsearch was indexing those documents, you'll be able to see what it would have done. So this is the actual document that would have got indexed, and you'll see that there's a new field added to it. So even though there's only one field, country in Australia, it also added this at date timestamp field, and that was configured down to the seconds, whereas the timestamp ingest field, so this doesn't get indexed, it's just for information, went way down to many levels of precision in relation to the seconds. So that's how we can simulate the processing that occurs when we process a document through a pipeline. So that was a really simple pipeline, and this is where I think often it's really useful. We can also get that timestamp field, and then we can use that to change the index that the document ends up in. So what we're doing here, so one is similar to the previous one, we're creating a field called at timestamp, and then based off that at timestamp field, we're going to change the index name to be country dash and then the month, which will be in format of like day, month, year, after country. So let's execute that. So we've created this, we've replaced the existing test pipeline with this new pipeline, and now we want to go simulate that again. So we go down to this simulate pipeline, and then we run that one, and you'll see that we have a new field. So you'll see that we have an underscore index. So that field got added. So we didn't change it in this time, so maybe we should have, but you'll see that the index is actually now the name country and then a dash and then the month, well, it actually says the date there, but that date will then get processed through into this format with the level of M for month for precision, and then we'll see that later, but basically the country dash and then I think the 1st to the 12th 2021. So so that's adding a pipeline. So it's an example pipeline is provided. We saw that there was various CRUD operations. You can obviously delete a pipeline by specifying its ingest pipeline name, and then we can also simulate a pipeline to see how it works. So I think we'll go and create some documents that match that pipeline. So we'll go create documents, try it out. We'll specify the pipeline name. So this is a query parameter which will be submitted with the request. So we hit that, and we'll see that the document was created, and yes, you'll see that it was created with a into an index called country 2021 1201. So all documents created this month will all end up in that index. Next month we just keep ingesting documents. We just keep pushing them at the same index and specify that pipeline. So we can still push the documents to the country index, but the pipeline will reallocate it to the country and then the date time index. Not date time, just the date index. So the more documents we add, they'll all end up in that one index because they're all getting indexed within this particular month. So it's looking all good. But over time, we're going to end up with information across these many indexes. And so how are we going to search those? And the answer was quite clearly identified before in the fact that there was an alias that was included within that index template configuration. So now, if we go and do a search, and we specify the countries index, which isn't an index, which is an alias, and run that, we'll see documents returned from these other indexes. So that alias has included those indexes that match anything country star and been returned. So that's where aliases sort of come into the picture. So we've included an alias within our index template. All our indexes that have been created after that have now been included within that alias. So we'll find those documents if we search for that alias. So that's retrieving documents that have been processed through an index pipeline and had a index template applied. So yeah, the last part of this conversation relates to aliases. So as we said, we have one alias called countries. We can take a look at that alias, and we can see that alias countries includes indexes which are country-2021-1201. But yeah, obviously as we get over time, we'll get more indexes included as there'll be new indexes created every month. Aliases also provide a really great functionality in relation to the management of aliases. So this is how we add aliases. We can remove aliases. So basically you can specify a number of actions. What this one does, which is where we remove one alias and add another. So this happens online, and this is really where green-blue configurations and Elasticsearch can be really helpful for maintaining uptime. So you can rebuild all of your indexes, and then at one point you can then switch the alias for that index. So the front-end application may be looking at an index, for example, the alias may be countries or country or whatever it may be. It could be logs, it could be payments, that kind of stuff. But underneath the actual indexes that house that information can be named differently, and an alias just points the application to the underlying data. But you can perform online switches of that alias with zero downtime to an alternative index that you've built up over time. So by submitting a request like this, just remove and add, that's like an atomic request. That means that any requests that were received afterwards will all get pointed to the new index, and it will happen instantaneously. There'll be no sort of requests that go to the old index and the new indexes. So yeah, so that's alias operations, and yeah, hopefully I'll explain how these sort of three components sort of tie together. So index templates allow you to create configurations for an index in advance of that index being created. Ingest pipelines allow you to modify the documents as they're coming into Elasticsearch, and yeah, one of the key things that you can do is change the index destination based off a date time within the field or a ingest date time. And then alias operations allow you to combine indexes together from a search perspective, and therefore I guess you can avoid having one, needing to have one giant index. And alias operations have other benefits as well, in the fact that you can rebuild indexes in the background and then flip the front-end application to the new index by just changing where the alias is pointing. So yeah, that's the index templates, ingest pipelines, and alias operations. I hope that's helpful. Take care. Bye.